This is a demonstration of the Trelliscope visualization tool that we have developed for the United States State Department to assist in sifting through the data presented in the Votester UN voting dataset from 1989 to 2013. This particular visualization looks at the number of times that any given country has voted, the percentage of times that any given country has voted with a series of blocks over the time in the dataset. We have included blocks such as the G77, Latin America, the former USSR, the African Union, Arab states, ASEAN, the European Union, BRICS, the United States, and OPEC. Using this display, we can both select and deselect any of these blocks to compare just a couple to each other or to view one in isolation. We can also look at, for instance, how often China, a member of BRICS, has voted with BRICS. For instance, in 2004, when the term was more or less officially introduced, China voted 92% of the time in accordance with BRICS. You can also sift through these and look at a variety of different countries. This display also allows us to view in a variety of different formats. We can look at one in isolation. We can also view several panels at once if we are interested in comparing them visually. The power of Trelliscope, as opposed to a simple trellis display, is in the cognostics, or cognitive diagnostics. These allow us to sift through the data and filter through the data in interesting and meaningful ways, particularly valuable considering the vast breadth of the data that we're dealing with. We have cognostics that look at the average voting concurrence for every single block that a country has, the difference that in voting concurrence that a country has between 1990 and 2013, as well as several categorical variables here and here that allow us to select and deselect specific blocks that we want to look at. Now, having these cognostics, as I mentioned, allows us to sift through the data in interesting ways. So, for instance, if we are interested in seeing which countries have changed the most in the negative direction in voting with the United States, we can select the cognostic diff USA and then sort from most negative to most positive. Now, looking at this, we see an interesting country here, which is South Africa. Not a country that we would expect to be voting considerably less in 2013 with the United States compared to at the beginning of the data set. So that brings the question, is South Africa, which is a member of BRICS, unique in this pattern, or is it a common theme among BRICS countries? So we can select the cognostics in BRICS, select yes, and find only the BRICS countries. And we see that South Africa has by far the largest negative change in voting with the United States, while China's is negligible, and the other three remaining countries have in fact increased their voting habits with the United States over the time period that we're looking at. We can examine whether this is unique to the United States, or maybe it's a characteristic of the entire Western world. And select diff EU. And that shows us that yes, in fact, South Africa is also moving away from the European Union countries, while China, India, Brazil, and Russia appear to be moving towards European Union countries and the West in general. So we can take a closer look at South Africa and its voting habits. And we see that when compared to the United States, it is in fact, beginning in 1994, it has been decreasing sharply. Now, we know that South Africa is a country that has considerable sway within the African Union and potentially within the G77. As a member of BRICS and an African country, it holds a relatively unique position. So we can see how these two blocs have been voting in relative to the United States to see if there are any common themes between South Africa's behavior towards the United States and their behavior towards the United States. We can select the African Union and the G77 and compare those to the United States for scale. And we see that although they were increasing, both the African Union and the G77 were increasing in their concurrence with the United States up until 1994. In 1994, when South Africa joined, we see a precipitous decline in voting with the United States, much as we saw in the case of South Africa. There's also a spike in 2012 that mimics the spike that we saw in the South Africa graph. This shows us that more than likely South Africa plays a significant role in determining the voting habits and policy orientations of African Union countries at the very least, and due to the large composition of African Union countries in the G77, the G77 as well. That tells us that when the United States is interested in passing a resolution that requires significant support from either of these two blocs, South Africa is an extremely important country to target.